Quiet on set. Speed. And action.
I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart.
You know how to whistle, don't you? You just put your lips together and blow.
Welcome to the Foot and Friends on Film podcast, discussing everything about cinema. Now here's your host, Nick Baylor.
What's in the bar?
Houston, we have a problem.
You can't handle the truth.
I'm not what you have crazy.
Welcome to the official podcast of Foot and Friends on Film.com, where we discuss everything about cinema. I'm your host, Nick Baylor. On today's episode, John and I are spotlighting the 15 greatest performances by a female actor in a leading role throughout cinematic history. Some familiar names pop up, might be a few surprises. Anyway, we had a fun discussion. So everybody, grab your popcorn and take your seats. It's time for the feature presentation. As mentioned, we are the official podcast for Foot and Friends on Film.com, where our motto is, any film you have not seen is a new experience. As I mentioned, we're talking about the 15 greatest actress performances in a leading role throughout cinematic history. This is a list that John assembled. You guys know the routine. We're about to get the big man on the line. So without further ado, please welcome John H. Foote. All right, so welcome back, John. We're here today to talk about the 15 greatest performances by female actors in leading roles. Now, there's obviously a lot to choose from throughout the entire cinematic history that we have built over all these years. I understand you got a few honorable mentions that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I got about 50 honorable mentions, but I narrowed it down to 5. Just actresses that I think should be in the top 15, but there just wasn't room. I mean, it should be a 10 best, and I couldn't even do that.
Right.
The 5 that didn't make the 15 that should be there, Sissy Spacek in Coal Miner's Daughter, just an exquisite performance as Loretta Lynn, did her own singing, aged from 14 to into her 40s, captured the essence of Loretta Lynn in every way possible. Loretta Lynn watched this film and said it was like watching a mirror of herself on the screen. It's just a miraculous performance. It won every acting award available to her that year and firmly established her as one of the top actresses in movies. Next would be Sally Field and Norma Ray. Again, brilliant performance as a Southern woman, kind of a loose woman who slept around a lot, and she finds her courage and her bravery as a labor organizer, trying to organize a labor union into the textile union, which is very corrupt and treats their employees horribly. And Field was a lightweight actress at this point in her career. She'd been the Flying Nun. She'd been in all the Smokey and the Bandit movies. Nobody really took her seriously as a heavyweight. She read the script of this that Martin Ritz sent her, and Burt Reynolds, her boyfriend, told her, "You do this movie, you'll win the Academy Award." She did the movie. She won the Academy Award. Like Sissy Spacek, she won every other award available to her that year as well, and firmly established herself as one of the top actresses in movies. 5 years later, she won her second Oscar for Places in the Heart and remains one of the most beloved actresses in movies. Next is a Canadian actress, Sarah Polley, for a movie that most people probably haven't even heard of, The Secret Life of Words. And she plays a victim of war crimes in the Balkan Wars in Yugoslavia. And she's just extraordinary. She uses a Yugoslavian accent, which works for her looks because she's got that unique Russian look. And she plays a young woman who was horribly raped, beaten, tortured, and somehow survived. And she meets a guy aboard a freighter, played by Tim Robbins, and he falls in love with her. He falls in love with her story, falls in love with everything about her. And she reveals to him exactly what happened to her, including having to kill her own daughter. She was forced to kill her daughter. And it conjures up memories of Sophie's Choice, and yet doesn't. Sarah Polley manages to keep it separate from Sophie's Choice and gives just a breathtaking performance. I can't believe she was ignored for the Academy Award this year, but she was. Reese Witherspoon won for Walk the Line, which I will curse to my dying day because Miss Polly should have won the award. Next is Bette Davis in All About Eve, one of the iconic performances in movie history. Our colleague Alan will curse me for not putting it in the top 15, but it was squeezed out. I'm sorry it was squeezed out. She's terrific in the movie as an actress who is keeping an eye on an up-and-coming young actress who has eyes on her career, who wants to be her. And in the movie, she utters that famous line, "Fasten your seatbelts, it's going to be a bumpy night." And you know she's going to make it a bumpy night because that's what Bette Davis did best. Next is Whoopi Goldberg in The Color Purple. The best thing about The Color Purple was Whoopi Goldberg. I'm not a fan of The Color Purple. I don't think it was a very good movie. I think it's one of Steven Spielberg's weaker movies. But Whoopi Goldberg anchors it in every way and gives a triumphant performance as Celie, a young woman who goes through horrible abuse and yet emerges as a decent person all round. So that's my runners up.
I didn't do adequate prep to throw in my 2 cents for the runners up here, but I just like to mention, I believe, just because this was fresh in my memory, one of the greatest leading performances by a female actor I've seen in recent years, and one I think should have won the Academy Award, was Lady Gaga in A Star Is Born.
She was terrific, and she is in my top 20, believe it or not. Both she and Judy Garland for the same film, for A Star Is Born, different time frames. But yeah, Gaga was terrific in A Star Is Born. I loved her in that movie.
Yeah, the title says it all, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And she deserved every accolade she got for that film. She was exceptional.
Yeah, she did walk away with an Oscar for Best Original Song for Shallow.
Yep.
I think that song is still charting, actually. Anyway, I was a massive fan of the movie, and I think she's got a bright future as an actress. Anyway, let's get into the top 15. We're going to start off at number 15 with a performance from the last film to win all of the major categories at the Oscars, Jonathan Demme's The Silence of the Lambs, based on the Thomas Harris novel of the same name. And we're talking, of course, about Jodie Foster as Clarice Starling.
I'm not sure people fully appreciated how great Jodie Foster was in this movie. All eyes were on Anthony Hopkins, of course, as Hannibal Lecter, and he was tremendous. But she's got a scene near the beginning of the movie. She's called into the field office to go speak with Jack Crawford. She gets on an elevator, and Jodie Foster is a tiny little thing. She's about 5'1", and we see these men towering over her. She walks into Crawford's office. She turns around, and she's looking at photographs of the victims of Buffalo Bill, the serial killer who skins his victims. And the looks that crossed Jodie Foster's face, the compassion, the pain, the anguish, the hurt, and the shock, and finally revulsion. In a split second, she conveys all of that. It's just an absolutely miraculous scene. And her scenes with Anthony Hopkins. I mean, again, Hopkins got the lion's share of attention, but she is there, present, completely. And he doesn't give that performance without her in that movie. There's just no way. She's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, playing a whip-smart young woman, which is hard to do. You know, Clarice Starling is very intelligent, a very good agent, knows exactly what she's doing. She's one step ahead of the game, even, you know, quite possibly ahead of Dr. Lecter. And to convey that is very difficult, and yet Jodie Foster did. It's I think, the best work of her career.
And Lecter realizes how smart she is almost immediately.
Oh, that's what attracts him to her. I mean, beauty is one thing with Hannibal Lecter, but intellect is what really, really turns him on and gets his motor running. And he's got that lovely scene where he's in the cage and their fingers touch, and he says, they'll say we're in love. Of course he's in love with her. The end of the book, Hannibal, the sequel to Silence of the Lambs, in the book, they become lovers. They don't in the film, of course, with Julianne Moore, but they did in the book. And to me, that's where the relationship would go.
I'm reminded of something, I think it might have been the director's commentary for this movie that I noticed, but in the scenes where they meet at the beginning, Jonathan Demme shot this in an interesting way. It's basically like a point of view shot from both of them going back and forth. However, when you're looking at Anthony Hopkins, he's looking directly into the camera. because we're
Yes.
looking through Clarice's eyes. Now, when
Yes.
we're looking at Clarice, she's looking slightly off camera.
Yeah. They wanted to convey the essence that Lecter could see into your soul, directly into your soul. And if you watch him, he never blinks. He never once blinks his eyes. It's as if his eyes are transfixed on your soul and he goes right through it. It's a brilliant acting effect.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that he was not the first actor to play Hannibal Lecter. Brian
it wasn't.
Cox, yeah, Brian Cox played him in Michael Mann's Manhunter, which was later remade as Red Dragon when Anthony Hopkins played it.
That's right. And a lot of people don't recognize that Jodie Foster wasn't the first choice to play Clarice Starling. Michelle Pfeiffer was going to do it, and for whatever reason withdrew, and they didn't know who to cast. And she fought for the part. She went to meet Jonathan Demme and got the part, and of course history was made.
We're moving on to number 14, and this entry is Shirley MacLaine in terms of endearment.
And I'll tell you what I think of this movie. We named our daughter, our oldest daughter, after Shirley MacLaine's character in terms of endearment. She plays Aurora Greenway, a Texas wealthy woman, mother, widow, who is horrified when her only daughter marries somebody she considers beneath her. She has high aspirations for her daughter, and what she doesn't recognize is that her daughter has strengths that she doesn't possess. Her daughter is able to live with less than she has. She's able to live beneath her means and love it. She's able to have her boys and her husband and be in a rented home, and she's okay with that. She's happy with that. But when her daughter gets cancer, it's Aurora that comes to the rescue and takes over, literally takes over, handles the grandchildren, handles the husband. Her lover next door, Jack Nicholson, in a brilliant performance, comes to visit her at the hospital, and she finally lets her guard down and breaks down in his arms and says to him, "Who'd expect you to be a good guy?" It's just a phenomenal piece of acting from Shirley MacLaine. When she won her Academy Award, she stood up there and said, "I deserve this." And she was absolutely right. She'd been nominated many times before, but this was by far the best work of her career. And again, she didn't just win the Oscar. She won the New York Film Critics Award, the LA Film Critics, the National Society. She won everything, and she absolutely deserved it. She's the mother-in-law from hell, but she's the mother literally sent from heaven. Just wonderful.
Good for her. Moving on to number 13, we're going to talk about a performance in what I believe you think is the greatest film musical of all time. And, of course, we're talking about Liza Minnelli in Cabaret, where she plays Sally Bowles.
Yeah, Liza was born to play this part. I'm a big believer that all actors, all great actors, have one great part in them. And they may not even be a great actor. Gregory Peck was not a great actor, but I can't imagine anybody else as Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
Liza Minnelli was great once, and it was in this film as Sally Bowles in Cabaret. She sings, she dances, she's a slut, she's a bitch, and she's vulnerable, hopelessly vulnerable, and a little girl wanting to be loved more than anything else. And her singing and dancing isn't so much to be, to make money, to make a living. It's attention. She needs attention. And when she's on that stage, she knows all eyes are on her, and that's what she loves. And she knocked it out of the park, And I loved her acceptance speech when she won her Oscar, which she absolutely deserved. She said, "Thank you for giving it to me," which was a hats off to her mother, Judy Garland, but thank you for recognizing me and not giving this because my mother was Judy Garland. It's an astounding piece of acting and one of the great performances of all time.
Moving on to number 12, we're going to talk about Katharine Hepburn in Long Day's Journey into Night.
She's on the list twice. She's one of 3 actresses that are on the list twice. And this was based on the Eugene O'Neill play. And she plays Mary Tyrone, a morphine addict. And it's a haunting, gut-wrenching, powerful performance in a really demanding piece of work. Sidney Lumet directed the film, and thank God he directed the film because he was a great director with actors. And here he had Katharine Hepburn at the peak of her powers. This was at her absolute greatest time, from 1960 to 1968. She was never better, and she is phenomenal as Mary Tyrone. I've seen this on stage. I've seen the Canadian film version with Martha Henry, which was wonderful. but nobody touches Katharine Hepburn as Mary Tyrone. She is Mary Tyrone, and should have won the Academy Award in '62 for Best Actress.
A more recent performance comes in at number 11 with Natalie Portman as Jackie Kennedy in Jackie.
And there might be a few howls of protest about this, but I don't care. I saw this film and I was knocked out. I've read about Jackie Kennedy. I've studied YouTubes on Jackie Kennedy, documentaries about her, and Natalie Portman, in the first 5 minutes, disappears under the skin of Jackie Kennedy. She is Jackie Kennedy. From the back of the car where her husband's brains are all over her dress, through to the funeral at the end of the film, through to confessing to a priest that she's considered suicide, and those final moments with the writer who has written a story about her for Life magazine. She's absolutely marvelous. And she does more than play, a first lady. She does something and that she captures the essence of a mother who has just lost her husband, and knowing her husband was a powerful man and wanting the world to mourn with her and allowing the world to mourn with her, and shooting down the men around her husband who didn't want her seen in public, didn't want her out and about with her children because her husband was assassinated, because there might be more assassins. And she proved to be absolutely steely through this all and did what she wanted to do to honor her husband. And it's a brilliant performance. I don't know how Natalie Portman lost the Academy Award that year to Emma Stone in La La Land. I love Emma Stone, but no question, this was the better performance.
Entering the top 10, coming in at number 10, we have another actress who appears twice on our list, Jane Fonda in They Shoot Horses, Don't They?
At this point in her career, Jane Fonda was recognized as a light comedic actress, kind of a sex bomb. She was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and was probably the pinup of many a young boy from Barbarella. That opening strip scene stunned every young boy that ever watched it. It stunned me when I saw it. In this film, she plays Gloria, who's a down-and-out actress who's been kicked around, probably abused, probably beaten down by life. And she enters a dance marathon hoping to win the prize, and discovers over the course of the month that they're dancing that it's corrupt, that the prize money is actually reduced because they include your meals, your lodging, your clothing changes, all of it, and you end up with maybe $100. And she's devastated by it. It just deflates her in every way. And she asks her dance partner to shoot her in the head. And he does. And when the police ask him why, his line is the title, They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Fonda is caustic, she's angry, she's full of rage, and yet she's also pathetic in so many ways. You just want to take her and hold her and let her know that it will be okay. But in her eyes, it's over. It's never going to be okay. She won the New York Film Critics Award for Best Actress for this performance, was nominated for her first Oscar, should have won, absolutely should have won Best Actress. The film was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, but curiously not Best Picture, which is kind of a slap in the face for director Sidney Pollack, but a brilliant film anchored in every way by Jane Fonda.
Coming in at number 9, we have Katharine Hepburn again for her role in A Lion in Winter.
She was great in this. She won her 3rd Academy Award for Best Actress. She's won 4 times, playing Eleanor of Aquitaine. And she's opposite Peter O'Toole, who is just terrific as the king who has imprisoned her. And he lets her out of prison for a short time, and we see the two of them going at each other, throwing barbs at each other. But through it all, halfway through the film, you realize they really love each other. They really respect and admire each other. And he knows if he lets her out of prison that she'll move to kill him. But she'll do it because she loves England more than she loves him. But she does love him. And he's got that great line, and the way he says it at the end of the film, I hope we never die, because he really does want to be with her forever. And yet he knows he can't keep her too close because she's treacherous. And Hepburn plays her that way. She's always thinking. She's whip smart and devious and will take over if she has to. It's just a stunning piece of acting. She tied with Barbra Streisand this year for Best Actress. One of the few times an actor has tied for an Academy Award. I think Hepburn had the edge. I think she should have won.
Coming in at number 8, we have an actress you may have heard of who is on our list twice and could probably populate many, many lists of her own. Of course, we're talking about Meryl Streep, this time for A Cry in the Dark.
It was really hard not to include 5 performances from Meryl Streep because, I could have included Out of Africa, Doubt, and Julie and Julia. But I went with A Cry in the Dark because one, it's an astonishing piece of acting. And she plays a woman who is intensely dislikable because she refuses to play the game the press wants her to play. She plays Lindy Chamberlain, a woman who was accused of murdering her infant baby in Australia. And she would not weep in front of the crowd. She would not pretend to be grief-stricken because she was dealing with that in herself privately and with her husband. She was grief-stricken. She was devastated, but she wasn't going to play that part. And she was convicted. She was found guilty. And a couple of years later, they found the remains of the baby and evidence that, as she said, the child had been taken away by a dingo, a wild dog in the Australian outback. And she was acquitted. And Streep plays her with a very severe haircut. And Meryl Streep's got a very angular face. And it makes her look nasty, almost nasty. And yet she's not. And her great accomplishment in this film is letting us under the skin of this woman so that we get to know her and understand what she's doing and what she is. She won the New York Film Critics Award for Best Actress. She was nominated for an Oscar. I think she should have won. I don't think there was any better performance this year, that particular year, than this one.
Coming in at number 7, if I remember from film school correctly, I believe you said this is the role that turned Elizabeth Taylor from a movie star into an actress. And we're talking about Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Yeah, she'd done some good work before this. Cat in the Hot Tin Roof was very good, but nothing like this, nothing like this. When the director, Mike Nichols, announced he wanted a real-life married couple to play George and Martha, everybody thought he was crazy. For one, they said he wouldn't get one. But he very boldly cast Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. Liz Taylor immediately packed on 45 pounds to play Martha. And she's a brash, vulgar, nasty, very sexual woman who enjoys browbeating her husband into submission. But they play a very curious game. They play mind games with each other. They weren't able to have children. So they've created a son, and he's now in university. They've raised him all through their lives. They played this game. And George, in a fit of anger, kills him during a party. And Martha loses her mind and goes at George all night long. This is the most dysfunctional married couple you've ever seen on a movie screen. And yet again, there's deep love between them. There's a deep connection between them. And Taylor is absolutely brilliant. She brays, she's loud, she's obnoxious, she's a slob and a slut. She's hitting on the younger guy all night long in front of her husband. Just a pig. But she's absolutely brilliant doing it. She pulled no punches. Mike Nichols told her the camera's going to be close and personal in your face. It's going to show every wrinkle, every crevice, every pore, every bit of spit that comes out of your mouth, we'll see. And she went for it. And she won the Academy Award and the New York Film Critics Award for Best Actress.
Coming in at number 6, we have Holly Hunter in The Piano.
I remember seeing this in 1993, and what it reminded me of was some of the great silent performances in the silent era. Maria Falconetti in The Passion of Joan of Arc, especially. Holly Hunter is a fireball of an actress. She's little. She's five feet tall. She's Southern. She's got that great Texas twang, and she talks kind of out of the corner of her mouth like Popeye. And she's got these piercing brown eyes. And she just bowls over everything in her way. She's a force of nature. Her first great performance in broadcast news, she knocked it out of the park. She blew William Hurt, Albert Brooks, and Joan Cusack off the screen with her performance. Here in The Piano, she does something she's never done before. She takes on a different accent. She's got a Scottish accent. Her character is mute, and her voice is in her mind. And she tells us that at the beginning of the film. The voice you hear is the voice in my mind. And her daughter, played by Anna Paquin, does all her translating for her. She shipped off from Scotland to New Zealand as a mail-order bride and despises the man she's married, but she falls in love with his head worker, played by Harvey Keitel. And they begin an affair that is scandalous in the area because, I mean, you just didn't do that at this point in time. Sigourney Weaver was supposed to play the part, but Holly Hunter wanted this role, and she did everything to meet Jane Campion and get the part. And it's one of the greatest performances ever given. It swept the awards that year. She won every single award that she could win, deservedly so. And she's never been better. I doubt she ever will.
Coming in at number 5, we have Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard.
And again, a performance that's just so good on so many levels. This is one of the ones that's on the list that did not win the Academy Award. Gloria Swanson was finished in 1950. Her career was over. She was a silent screen star who had worked with Cecil B. DeMille, and she hadn't worked earnestly in film for a long time. And Billy Wilder wanted to make a very black movie about what happened to the silent screen stars. And she plays Norma Desmond, who lives in a big, huge mansion by herself, living with her ex-husband, Max, who's now her butler. And a young writer drives into her place to hide one day from creditors, and she takes him into her home and into her bed, provided he writes a script for her based on Salome, which will be her comeback film. She's absolutely insane, bonkers, out of her mind, wacko crazy, living in the past. And she is so deranged, so pathetic, she doesn't even realize that everybody is laughing at her. And at the end of the film, after she's killed William Holden, the police are there and the news cameras are there. And she thinks it's a movie. She thinks it's a close-up. And she's got that great moment where she descends the stairs and walks towards the camera. And we see how utterly insane she really is. Swanson was magnificent, absolutely magnificent in the film. How she lost the Oscar, I don't know. And she lost it to Judy Holliday, who was a light comedian who won it for Born Yesterday. The only thing I can think of, the only thing that makes sense, is that she and Bette Davis split the vote. Bette Davis for All About Eve, and Judy Holliday picked up the votes and won the award. It should have been Swanson's.
Coming in at number 4, we're going back over 8 decades to Vivian Leigh in Gone with the Wind.
So many things are great about this performance. I mean, Vivian Leigh had the courage to play an absolute bitch. Scarlett O'Hara is a horror show of a human being. She lies, steals, manipulates, humiliates, does everything to get what she wants. And what she wants is power and money. She's a Southern belle who loses everything in the Civil War, everything. But her father tells her, Tara is in your blood. Tara is their plantation. And as long as you've got that, as long as you've got land, you've got something. She marries men for money and prestige, and somehow they all die. Her first husband is killed at war. Her second husband is killed in a murder raid to the KKK. And finally, she marries Rhett Butler, who's always been in love with her. And they're a great match. He can actually deal with her as a human being, which few men can. Yet she even blows that. And at the end of the film, she realizes she loves him. And he tells her, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn, and walks away. And she's so fixated on getting him back, she will not be defeated. And she says at the end of the film, I'll get him back because tomorrow is another day. Vivian Leigh proved without a shadow of a doubt a woman could carry a 3-hour-plus movie. Men didn't believe she could, but she did. And every actress in Hollywood auditioned for this part. Maureen O'Hara, Bette Davis, Joan Crawford, Lucille Ball auditioned for this. And yet Vivian Leigh got it and made it her own. She's magnificent in the film. Absolutely magnificent.
Coming in at number 3, we have Charlize Theron portraying real-life serial killer Eileen Wuornos in Monster.
What struck me about watching this movie was I've interviewed Charlize Theron, and you can't believe how beautiful she is when she's sitting in front of you. Her skin is like porcelain, and her eyes are just jewels in her face. And yet in this movie, she's heavily made up. Her eyes are wild and murderous. Her skin is ruddy and freckled. She gained about 35 pounds to play the part. Eileen Wuornos was a monster. She was a horrific human being who enjoyed killing. She killed because she hated the male race and had an opportunity to lash back and get even for the abuse she endured as a child. She had no chance, granted. She had no chance to make it as a normal person in the world. So she began killing men. And she was a hooker in Florida, and men would pick her up and she would kill them. Charlize Theron does something extraordinary. She gets under the skin of the character and allows us to care about her, makes us care about her. when we shouldn't. She's repellent from beginning to end. And yet so great is Theron's performance that we care about this person. Again, she won all the awards that she deserved to win, everything. Stunned, absolutely stunned the film world with this performance. Nobody thought she was an actress of this caliber. And I remember Roger Ebert saying about the movie after he'd seen it, we've just seen one of the greatest performances in the history of the cinema. And he was absolutely right.
It is a towering performance, and
It
she
is.
is utterly unrecognizable in the role.
Absolutely. And you know, Christina Ricci never got the credit she deserved for her work in the
Right.
film. And
Yeah.
she's terrific in it. Directed by Patty Jenkins, who went on to do Wonder Woman.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're coming in at number 2 now with a second appearance by Jane Fonda in Clute.
Jane Fonda, you know, was best known as Hanoi Jane in the 1970s, the protester of the war in Vietnam. And yet she was also the most formidable actress working in American movies before Meryl Streep. She didn't just open the door for American actresses, she kicked it in and stomped on it. When she was in Clute, she was the first mainstream actress to do full nudity, sex scenes. She was the first woman to say fuck in a major motion picture. She looked slutty. She was, vomiting, drug addicted. She was a horrible person. And she meets this cop, John Clute, and he accepts her for what she is. And she becomes a better person over the course of the movie. She plays a hooker who's being stalked by one of her clients. And they can't figure out who, but they do believe he's going to kill her. And Fonda is absolutely brilliant. She's terror-stricken for much of the movie. But we also see her other life as a hooker, as a wannabe actress, as a drug addict. We see all of that. And despite what she is, despite what, the way Fonda portrays her, we like her, we care about her, we want her to do better. And she does. She does. She overcomes her life to be a better person. Fonda won the Academy Award. She won another New York Film Critics Award for Best Actress. And the National Society of Film Critics gave her Best Actress as well. And what was classy about her accepting her Oscar, everybody expected an anti-war speech, and they were ready for it. ABC was going to cut away when she got the Oscar. She went up and she said, I've got a lot to say, but tonight's not the night to say it. Thank you very much, and walked off stage. And in that moment, Jane Fonda had more class than anybody else at the Academy Awards that night.
Before we get to number 1, just want to mention that this podcast is the first in a series we're going to be doing. We're going to be taking a look at the best performances from male actors in leading roles, and then we're going to go ahead and do one each for females and males in supporting roles. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Check out our YouTube channel, click like and subscribe. Also, before we get to number 1, I just want to take a quick break because we haven't done this in a few weeks, but we're going to take a look at some of the news going on in the movie world right now. So, the big, stories that's going on right now, and not really surprised, is that everything is getting pushed back. A lot of the movies from this year that were supposed to come out in the spring months and summer months have been pushed back to award season, which could prove interesting to see how that will affect awards season. But production on a lot of movies has been pushed back to next year. I also just wanted to take a moment, John, to ask about your thoughts on Brian Dennehy, who died recently.
Wonderful actor, possibly the greatest Willy Loman in the history of productions of Death of a Salesman. Spectacular. Willy Loman was written as a big man, and Lee J. Cobb played him on stage for the first time and was the definitive Willy Loman until Dustin Hoffman came along. But Brian Dennehy, I think his size and his bulk brought something special to seeing Willy just crushed by life, crushed by his sons. He's a great actor. I love watching him.
You ever meet him?
I did not. He's one of the ones that I would have liked to, but never got a chance.
All right, there you have it, folks. Thanks for the quick little news break. Now we're getting back to the list. We're coming in at number 1. Anyone who knows you, John, or knows anything about cinema or knows us probably won't be surprised by this. So just imagine a drum roll here, folks. The greatest leading performance from a female actor as chosen by us is, of course, Meryl Streep in Sophie's Choice.
And yeah, you're right. I don't think anybody that knows me or has read my work or has talked to me or studied with me is surprised by this. I saw this film opening day in 1982, and I walked out of the theater unable to speak over what I'd just seen. And I said to myself, then that's the greatest performance I've ever seen. And here we are nearly 40 years later, and it's still the greatest performance I've ever seen. Meryl Streep was still a rising actress when she made this film. And to do it, she learned to speak Polish and German, and then learned how to speak Polish and German in broken English, and did it to perfection. The director, Alan J. Pakula, was going to cast a German actress. He had her all set. He had the contract in front of her until he met Meryl Streep. And that was it. He was smitten. He was in love with her. He cast her, and she gave this incredible performance. She plays Sophie, the survivor of Auschwitz, who comes to the United States, a ghost, an absolute ghost. And she's emaciated, she's starving, and she meets Nathan, played by Kevin Kline, a paranoid schizophrenic who nurses her back to health. He adores her, but he's absolutely insane. He goes into murderous rages, jealous rages, accuses her of all sorts of things, but she's got this need for him. It's like she's addicted to him. Over the course of the film, we get snippets of what Sophie's life was in Germany during the rise of Nazism. And in the final moments, she's telling her story to Stingo, her good friend, and she arrives at Auschwitz with her 2 children. And because she's Polish, she's told she has a choice. She can keep one of her children. And the guard is about to send both of them away. He's going to kill them both when she suddenly hands him the little girl and says, "Take my little girl." Because as a mother, she probably knew inherently that the boy had a better chance of survival. And we stand there watching her as she screams. But the sound that comes out of her mouth is her daughter screaming as she walks away. It's like Edvard Munch's famous painting, The Scream. It's a stunning moment. Streep was astonishing in this movie. I've never seen anything like it. I doubt I ever will. She's never surpassed it. And consider that. She's a young rising actress when she makes this movie, and she's still never surpassed it. 40 years later, she's given great performances since, many of them. Bridges of Madison County, Doubt, Julia versus Julia, and yet she's never, ever surpassed what she did in Sophie's Choice. It's just a remarkable achievement.
Yeah, I remember I wasn't familiar with the film when I was your student, and you told us about it, and then I went home and watched it, and it's visceral and haunting, and it stays with you.
It does, and the movie, I don't think, got enough praise at the time. It was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, but not Best Picture, not Best Director, not Best Supporting Actor for Kevin Kline. And I mean, it should have been. It was one of the 5 best films I saw that year, and a lot of other critics said the same thing. They were really surprised that the Academy snubbed it in so many ways. Not Streep, of course. Everybody knew she was going to win the Academy Award. Deborah Winger famously said, "What's the point of going? Meryl's going to win." And she was right. And of course, she won everything that year. The Globe, the critics in LA and New York, the National Society, everything, right across the board, and deservedly so.
Yeah, and to this day, any difficult choice made by someone is referred to as Sophie's Choice in reference to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, whenever an actress comes along and gives a great performance, this is the one that it's measured by. When Charlize Theron did Monster, this was what they looked to see, is it greater than what Streep did in Sophie's Choice? Well, no, but it's still a formidable piece of acting. When Natalie Portman did Jackie, well, is it as good as Meryl in Sophie's Choice? No, but it's really, really good. It's up there. I mean, it's just a titan of a performance from the greatest actress in the history of the cinema.
There you have it, folks. The top 10, 15 performances by female actors in leading roles in the history of cinema. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me, John. And like I said, we'll be back with more of this.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
There you have it, folks. Episode number 14. The 15 greatest performances by a female actor in a leading role throughout cinematic history. This is the first episode in a series of 4 we're going to be doing. Up next, we're looking at the men. And then after that, we're going to do 15 for actresses and actors, respectively, in supporting roles. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check us out on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Most importantly, check out our official YouTube channel for this, all past and future episodes of the podcast. Got some cool stuff coming up in the near future. We're going to take a look at the 1980s, and we're doing an episode spotlighting Christian Bale. Until next time, we'll see you at the movies.